Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 171 of Let's Go Racing. Tyler Schultz here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, going to be joined by Jerry Jordan. Jerry of KickinTheTires.net, as we will get Jerry's take on the Daytona 500. Look ahead to this weekend's race at Atlanta as he joins us coming up in just a little while from right now. We'll have our news and notes. We'll have our mailbag segment coming up later on as well. Dominic Aragon joins me at the top of the show. And Dominic, Daytona, what a wild finish. It took a while finally for it to get there, but it did eventually happen with William Byron going from 9th place to 1st place on the final lap. A very eventful race. Glad to see that Ryan Preece is okay after that scary crash there. And it wouldn't be NASCAR without a little controversy. They do one thing on Thursday night and do another on Sunday when it comes to calling cautions. But nonetheless, Dom, I thought it was entertaining. May not been what the drivers liked necessarily, but I thought they put on a show. And William Byron going back-to-back, youngest driver to ever go back-to-back as Daytona 500 champion. William Byron, I mean, this guy is just unbelievable. I mean, he's so good everywhere, it seems.
So let's go over some of those numbers too, because you're starting to really make the case now for a someday, no matter what he does the rest of his career, a William Byron Hall of Fame nominee, if not in the Hall someday. But that's his 14th career win. We'll start there. 57th now all time on the wins list, breaking that tie with Tim Richmond and others. But more importantly, though, Tyler, 43 men have won the Daytona 500 in 67-year history. 13 drivers have won more than once. William Byron is now in that elite company. And you said it best. He's the youngest of all the ones that have won consecutively. But the drivers that have won consecutively now, you look at drivers like Richard Petty, who was the first to do it in the 60s. Kelly Yarborough did it in the 70s. Denny Hamlin did it in 2019 to 2020. Sterling Marlin did it from 93 to 94. So it seems like it's a once in a decade, maybe once every 20 years type of deal. But William Byron has the chance to maybe even get that third one in a row, which has never been done.
Yeah, pretty remarkable stuff from William Byron to get it done. And the weekend as a whole, Dom, we saw some incredible action in the dual races that came down right to the wire. The truck race and ARCA race were interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Xfinity race, Jesse Love with a nice win, and then William Byron getting it done in the 500. I was entertained. I can understand the frustrations of folks of how things may have played out. And we all know what Denny Hamlin said in his podcast of the over-the-top chaos that maybe Daytona's kind of lost its luster of what the racing has made great. But it's one of those things where, Dom, I feel like you have to find a happy medium. I don't want the drivers to be perfectly satisfied if we're going to get the product we want either. There's got to be a middle ground. And I think Denny is right to an extent, but at the same time, too, the fans at the end of the day are getting, I felt, was a good product Sunday night.
Yeah, Danny was on his show Actions Extra talking about the 500. He said he woke up Clint Eastwood mode. He was pissed. He got off my lawn kind of mad about how the race had ended. But that I see where he's coming from. I do see that it is, yes, an entertainment sport. We are going to have some things that are made for TV, of course. But that sport element of it, very interesting for him to say, because he's been out there 20 years now to learn from the best of the best. And he threw some shade as if, okay, at least William Byron winning the race legitimizes it. But he threw John Hunter Nemechek under the bus. Said, would we having this conversation if he had won the race? And no respect to JHN is what he had said. But certainly some things to consider. And he's been doing it now, like he said, 20 years. So certainly some weight to that. And I'm going to go back here about 45 seconds from what you were talking about with the truck race. I think worthy of a shout out. And he's probably listening to the show. Friend of the show last week on with us, Norm Benning, had to race his way in, qualified in. I don't know about you, Tyler. Pretty cool to see that white truck in that lead pack with a few laps to go. He said his truck was going to be fast, and surely he was fast on Friday night.
Yeah, and one of the big stories of the weekend, too, Jimmie Johnson, who has had his fair share of struggles in that 84 car, finishing in 3rd place and having just a fantastic run. I don't know how much more we're going to see of Jimmie Johnson in a Cup car, but I'm glad that we got to see, Dom, at least one more time of Jimmie Johnson running up front with a chance to win and to do it in the biggest race of the year. I was happy for Jimmie and all his fans, too, to have at least that moment there.
Tyler, this is big. This is his first top 5 finish since 2020. It matched His best finish is Dover in September of 2020, his last full-time year. And prior to Daytona, his best finish in a next-gen car. Granted, it's part-time schedule. He hadn't really been running a lot of back-to-back weekends, but was 28th at Phoenix, or 26th at Phoenix, rather, in the finale last year. And before that, it was about 28th and 29th. Kind of looking like Darrell Waltrip in his twilight years. But you could also say it was like when Waltrip filled in that one-car Pocono, led laps, finished in the top five in 98. That's kind of what Jimmy Johnson had here. But I'd be curious to bring Jerry in on this here in a minute. Bob Pockris of Fox Sports had an interview with Jimmy on pit road, and Jimmy was all smiles. You could tell he was very happy about it. It sounds like he wants to do more races. Like it just something like that. How can it not amp you up to give you some natural momentum?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. We're going to bring in Jerry Jordan now. Dom, he's been a very familiar guest to this program and the NASCAR community for a very long time. Not trying to make Jerry sound old. He can do that on his
I
own.
am. It's okay.
But Dom, give us the rundown of our guest this week.
So Jerry Jordan, you know him as the owner and operator of Kickin the Tires, not .com, .net,
.net.
and has been around the sport covering for 25 plus years. Jerry certainly brings a lot of knowledge to the table, and we're always honored to have him here on the Let's Go Racing panel this week. So thanks for joining us. And you were in Daytona this past week, so who better than to bring a guest who was there?
Yeah, I mean, hey, I was, and I did. I also watched Jimmy's podcast, and I agree with Denny in some aspects of it. Um, I want to point out we're talking about Jimmy Johnson getting a good finish. We're talking about William Byron winning the race. Uh, the 22, the 12, the 4, the 9, the 8, the 47, the 34, and the 41 were all involved in the lap 187 caution. And then the one lap 197 caution, the 20, the 41, again, the 60, the 6, the 5, the 43, and the 99 and the 23 were all involved in that caution. So like half the field got wiped out in the final 13 laps of the race. William Byron probably should not be the winner of the Daytona 500 this year. Sorry, William. Love you. You're a great guy. He's a great driver, great person. I just don't think with that many cars wiping out when they did that he was going to finish first. Honestly, I thought Denny was going to win the dang thing, and he had damage too. So it's just, when do we stop, or how do we stop, or whatever drivers from, as Denny pointed out, driving around half throttle for most of the race and then acting like fools for the final 15? Because really, I forget, maybe Matt Weaver wrote about it, but he said something to the effect of, we should just, some drivers say we just have 65 laps and just let everybody go at it, and that'll be the end of it. And because we're getting to a point, it's not the Daytona 500. They're not racing. They're out there maneuvering and jockeying. It looks good on TV. I couldn't do it. I mean, I'm not a race car driver, but in all honesty, they're not doing what Dale Earnhardt did. They're not doing what Jeff Gordon did. They're not doing what Jimmy Johnson used to do when he was racing, or Tony Stewart. Okay, it's something different. It's not the same event, in my opinion. And I hate all the wrecks at the end of it. I am not, look, I'm a photographer when I'm at the track a lot, and I like to get cool shots and just stuff like that. But when it comes to seeing cars wreck, that is not racing to me. Um, Rubbing is not racing to me. I want to see cars battling out and passing and doing stuff. Yeah, you might get into somebody, but at a short track, now we're just moving people out of the way. Here, they're getting stupid sometimes. I mean, Joey Logano and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Joey did not have enough room to make that move, and Ricky Stenhouse threw one hell of a big block and backed up the whole field and wrecked a bunch of people. They still had plenty of laps. They were fast cars. They probably would have worked their way to the front. Even Ricky said that. We probably would have gone to the front, and it took out Corey LaJoie. It took out Joey, and it took out several other drivers that would have been decent contenders. So how do we fix it? And I don't know the answer to that, because I'm not a car fixer guy.
I would say this, Jerry. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I hear all this complaining from Denny and these other drivers, and I say to myself, well, what are you doing about it? Aren't the drivers part of the problem here of being over aggressive and putting themselves in this position?
But you can't tell. It's still got the prestige of winning the Daytona 500. And how many times we've heard this? Drivers take their brains out of their heads when they get in the race car and strap in, and they just become, some of them just become dumb. They just make dumb decisions. I think, Joey Logano. I'm meeting with him on Friday. I'm doing an interview on him Friday, and God knows Joey and I have had our interview kerfuffles in the past. He wants to talk about Austin Dillon. I think he put himself in a situation where he wrecked a whole bunch of people, because he made a dumb move. Maybe Austin Dillon made a dumb move too, if that's what, that was what the big argument was about last year. But Joey's done it plenty of times at Daytona where he is wrecked being too aggressive. And Ricky Stenhouse, look, there's a reason I like Ricky, like all the drivers in the garage, but there's a reason his nickname is Recky Stenhouse Jr. Okay, because he drives like a crazy person at super speedways.
So
That's
there's
just
something too about the super speedway racing. You've been covering the sport a lot longer than both of us, so I'd be curious your insight on this. Because yes, maybe there's luck now with the Daytona 500 and like how Danny has been saying the racing has changed and evolved over the last few years. But you look at big names that have been excluded not only from Daytona but super speedway racing, restrictor plate racing, whatever you want to call it. Drivers like Rusty Wallace, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson not able to capitalize and win at these races. Kyle Larson's a lot of things. He's a great racer. Super speedway racing is just not one of them. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here too is Jeff Gordon had brought that up as something that they need to work on. So you can have all this luck as a part of it, Jerry, but you still feel like, I don't know, there's still all these drivers that go 0 for 60 or 0 for 70 on a super speedway race. Why can't some of these guys that are past champions get it done on the super speedways?
when it comes to Larson, he just has bad luck. I mean, he does have bad luck, but he is also an aggressive driver. And uh you hear people talk about it. He is not afraid to move you, and he's not afraid to put his car in position because he's so used to being out of shape or being out of halfway out of control in dirt cars, because he can handle a car no matter what. But in a super speedway, it's a little bit of a different animal. And he hasn't been able to put it together. Look, I still put him on my bingo card every year to win. Okay. Um, I do, because I think one day he's gonna figure it out and get to the end. It's not that he's a bad racer. Hell, he's one of the best racers out there, proven. Okay, and he's gonna win another championship, no doubt in my mind. But when it when it comes to super speedways, he can't find the luck. And I don't know if it's about luck. Martin, I actually think Mark Martin won a super speedway race. I think he beat Kevin Harvick that year. Okay, and the caution didn't fall the way it should have, and hey, it's what it is. NASCAR made a different ruling. But I think Mark Martin, and you ask Mark Martin will tell you he won that race too.
Or Truex,
So,
Martin Truex Jr. never won on super speedways either.
yeah, and he's always said that it's just been a different animal for him. It's he's had some good cars. He just couldn't figure out how to put it to the end, or how to make it to the end, because other stupid stuff is happening around him. And look, if you're too far to the front, or you're too far to the back, you're either, if you're too far to the back, you're not going to get to the front most likely. If you're too far to the front, you're probably okay. But if you're in that middle pack, you're toast. If something
Yeah.
happens, you're toast. If you're in those middle 20 cars, it that's not a safe place to race.
How about NASCAR's decision at the end of the race not to throw the caution compared to what they did Thursday night, and they called the caution? And this has been an ongoing topic, Jerry, for years about these last laps. Do you let them play it out? Do you throw the caution for safety? And they do one thing Thursday night and do a totally different thing Sunday. Jerry, I look at it, I don't care which way you do it, one way or the other. I just wanted to be consistent. Is that asking too much? How do you think how NASCAR handled Thursday and Sunday with those situations?
Well, I mean, I was sitting up there watching it, but I didn't think Thursday was warranted a caution. Really, honestly, not at I mean, there were what 30 feet from the start finish line.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, like when it was what I saw, and if you don't throw the caution, they cross. It's over. Okay, you threw the caution. Let it race out. Sunday night, it happened way on the backside of the track. You know, well, no, actually, that was the first caution they did throw, and then they didn't throw it as it was happening coming down the front stretch. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the guy on the finger on the button in the tower, but I'm not sure it's the same person either. I don't know if the same race controller is making that call. So I don't have a good answer for you on that.
Because
But I
how
think
that
that I think they were a little bit different locations when they were wrecking. May
because it
not have
was
been
similar.
much, but I think they were in a little bit different locations.
I
Similar to
mean,
2021 too, because you had a crash there on the last lap where the seas parted for Michael McDowell. Keselowski and Logano crashed. They take out a bunch of the drivers. Very similar circumstances. I think the only thing that was the difference is you do see the fire in turn three at that 2021 crash. But I don't know. You're right, Jerry. There must be somebody different every time doing it.
well, like I just want consistency. Like Dom, the way I think of it, you guys know I got a football background. I was just at the Super Bowl a few weeks ago, and you
You
know,
had to throw that in there, huh?
a little bit.
Of course.
And I think of like from a football standpoint, you either want somebody like a lot of times you have situations where are we getting ticky tack officials tonight? Or are they going to let them play? And the only thing I ask for is just be consistent. If you're going to be
Uh,
ticky tack, go all in
Hey,
and be
hey,
ticky
hey,
tack.
hey, at
If you're
least
going to
our officials,
let them play.
at least our officials make mistakes and don't just get bought out.
That's a whole other topic. Yeah. Um, that we know of. We could talk about those phantom debris caution, that helped that show early on.
There really was debris on the front stretch because I saw it, but I was looking down on it, but there really was some debris there.
But,
But you're
but,
right.
but to my point, Jerry, like,
We do have some questionable debris cautions from time to time.
but to my point, Jerry, like, I don't care what you call, but be consistent one way or the other here. We shouldn't be sitting here on Tuesday night having this conversation that they did one thing Thursday and did a different thing Sunday. I think that's wrong to the drivers, not just the fans, but to the drivers that they don't know what to expect.
I think NASCAR has been very consistent on long fuel runs that within 30 to 40 laps of the race, they're going to find a caution to throw. However that happens.
Yeah, they'll find a way. They'll invent something called stage racing too. Yeah.
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 My hard card is so going to get pulled.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
we're all in trouble. We're all
all
going down
covered.
together, boys.
Well, I'll tell you, there's one feel-good story I think we do need to touch on. Jerry, you were there. I'm curious, the more insight, the peek behind the curtain that you got on this. But for those that aren't aware, of course, Corey LaJoie doing his partial hybrid schedule, whatever you want to call it, in 2025, running 6 races. He's running Daytona, he's running Atlanta, but he secured that ride with his own money. They got the sponsorship later. He was making, I guess, comments in his media center interview after he had made the 500 Thursday night that it was a five-figure amount of money to take from his college fund for his kid to get that ride secured. One heck of a gamble. I know we've all gambled here from time to time, but Jerry, that was one of the more stories that caught my eye, and was just curious what else you had heard around that story, because that's certainly something that catches a lot of attention the way that was done.
Well, look, parents take from their kids' college fund all the time to fund a racing deal. Not it's usually for the kid. I'm working with a kid right now. That his dream is to be a NASCAR driver. But he's going to go to college. But right now he's working in the field. He's working in racing, and some of the money he had for college he's diverted over to racing, hoping he can make something back and pay for and do both. 17 years old. So, you got to take a gamble. There's drivers out there that have taken $2 million loans from investment groups to fund their racing endeavors. Okay. I'm not going to say who they are. It's not my place, but I know for a fact there's multiple drivers that have taken those types of loans to buy a ride so that they can be in a car and make money and prove themselves to move up in the sport. And that's just a gamble you have to take. If you want to, there's very little we're going to give you a ride based on talent anymore. And I think that also is part of the problem with races like the Daytona 500 and racing in general with NASCAR. You go through that garage and you probably, especially on the Xfinity and truck level, you know, and there's some on the cup level. You can go through that, you can go through that garage. Yeah. Uh, and you can find people that don't deserve to have a ride. Okay. You go through any of those garages and you'll find somebody that doesn't deserve to have a ride, but they've got deep pockets and that gets them a car. You know, if I went when Tony Stewart had his team, if I went to him with $25 million, he'd have probably put me in a car. Okay. And I can't drive a lick. So just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And especially Corey, making those comments a few weeks ago that wanting to race on Sundays and do whatever it takes. I respect the effort, the commitment, that he's putting, at least he's putting his money where his mouth is.
But here's the other thing. Hold on. Here's the other thing. Last place in the Daytona 500 pays six figures. Okay.
Close to 500 grand. Yes.
Yeah. So last place in the 500 pays six figures. So he made just like my rolling over all of my stuff last year from my betting into betting on the Eagles in the over. He made a good bet. So that was for your benefit there.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, that wound is still wide open. Yes. Yeah, thanks for that. But with that said, it is fascinating to see where this is, and it's not getting any cheaper by any stretch of the imagination. No. We're only going to see more of this. That's the reality of it going forward from here. Looking to this weekend in Atlanta.
How about say? Let me tell you something. Do you know how much it costs to get a late model ride? A late model ride at late model asphalt. How much?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's not cheap.
15 to 25,000 to get a truck ride. It could be as much as 50. Yeah, probably more 20 to 35. Okay, and if you get the right deal, you can get it for a little less. When you start getting up into Xfinity, you're talking like I think Ryan Preece spent $2 million on 6 rides with JGR.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's insane what it costs to go racing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, certainly. Looking ahead this weekend.
It's $3,500 to go racing in a micro.
He's not joking.
No. Yeah. Well, even here Norm Benning last week, Jerry talked about the tire prices went up. We always heard about the $2,000 per set. He was saying it was close to about $2,800 now for a set of tires.
Yeah, I do tours on the garage and I always go find out because everybody wants to know how much tires are. And I started off at $2,000 and then over the years it's gone up. It's 27 right at 26, 27. Yeah. Plus whatever the other, ancillary costs with valve stems and all that other crap that, and just stuff that they lug nuts add up. So
yeah, we can get Sunoco to pay for fuel, but we can't get Goodyear to pay for everybody's tires. Yeah.
No, Goodyear makes money off the, and honestly, Sunoco makes money too. So
yeah,
big make that money back. Yeah,
big shock. Looking ahead to this weekend in Atlanta, I've only been teasing it for 4 minutes, but
sorry, I've been diverting you.
Yeah, and Dominic too. He's guilty of it as well.
Yeah, just diverting like a Jalen Hurts run, Jerry. That's all.
Oh, stop it.
I went into the Super Bowl knowing that the Eagles, obviously because I bet it, but I knew they were going to win. Like I had no doubt.
This race in Atlanta, boys. Home of the Atlanta Falcons. There we go. Who don't have much to.
And they were going to win the Super Bowl a few years ago, and I think your Chiefs actually beat the crap out of them. So
that was actually the Patriots.
Oh, it was the Patriots. There you go. That's right.
That was the infamous 28-3 game when the Falcons blew that one away. Shout out Matt Ryan.
Yep.
This race, what I wonder is, they've gone to this style of racing, this plate style of racing on a 1.5 mile track. And we hear all this about, Daytona wasn't that great, too much crash fest and all this. And last year we saw this incredible 3-wide finish. Hell, they even made a movie about it this weekend for crying out loud.
Yep.
Do you think that we see, Jerry, another great Atlanta race like we saw last year, or are these guys going to pick up right from where they left off in Daytona with the crazy again?
It's a different track. It's a different track. It's a different vibe, and they know that in those tight quarters they can't do what they do. They can't do that pushing and getting all kind of stupid on the track. The reason why we had three wide racing was because they didn't do that stuff. They didn't try to run into each other. They didn't try to throw as many blocks. They just raced. And that's what we need to see again. Will they do something dumb? They're drivers. You never know. But the truth is, if they go out there and they do what they're supposed to do, we'll have a great race in Atlanta because since they've turned that into a super speedway with high banks, it's been some good racing.
Do you think more mile and a half tracks are going to follow what Atlanta's doing with their repaves potentially down the road and bring this style of racing forward?
Look, we saw this with road courses. We saw this with the mile and a half coming in. It was like every time we do something in NASCAR, we seem to get something that works, and then we try to, you know, like repeat the process. I think we kind of learned our lesson on that to some degree. I haven't heard of any tracks that are moving in that direction. You know, so hopefully they won't. I haven't, like I said, I don't think that SMI would do it. Maybe NASCAR would do a shorter super speedway. But right now, no one is spending money. Okay, look, NASCAR had layoffs in the off season. They had layoffs just after the first of the year. So it's one of those things that there's a lot of cuts going on behind the scenes. And it's expensive. So to redo a track like that. So I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Well, and I look at it, Dom, like this. Take example, the other close finish last year, Kansas. That's a mile and a half track as well. And you and I have been there many times, and they had an even closer finish than Atlanta did. And even though it's the same size as Atlanta, totally different style of racing, and they put on a show here. I love what Atlanta is doing, but not every track needs to be Atlanta. You can still have successful races like Kansas and Atlanta. You can have your cake and eat it too on these mile and a half tracks, I think.
Certainly. Kansas, I think, proved that. We've seen great racing at Texas. Now, some may agree or disagree with that over the years, but some of these mile and a halves have put on some really, really good racing. Homestead Miami Speedway is another example of that. Las Vegas. So you get this variety of mile and a half tracks, even how they're laid out too. And sure, we're not getting what we see at Atlanta, but you're still getting good racing. Like fuel mileage, you can't tell me that was not exciting last year with Suarez, Joey Logano, and Christopher Bell in that round of 8 Las Vegas race, or Kyle Larson dominating the way he did in the March race. So there's certainly a lot of aspects to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Let's get to our news and notes, our headlines across the sport. Dom, where do we want to start this week?
Let's start with Fox. Will continue to be using their side-by-side commercials. So, according to a report from Jonathan Field at the Racing Experts, we all know him. Fox NASCAR will continue to only show side-by-side commercials during green flag racing for its network races, a spokesman had confirmed to the Racing Experts. The spokesman had also said that Fox is going to feature full screen ads during stage breaks and under caution, but during green flag racing on Fox, fans win. Everyone's going to get to see racing as it was with the Daytona 500. Now, Fox will be carrying the next few races. You're going to have Atlanta, Circuit of the Americas, Talladega in April. The other races are going to wear on FS1, and you might see some of those full ads during the races on Fox Sports 1, but certainly something that I think is a W in the Fox column and a W for the fans.
Well, and folks may not know this, but because of cable deals that are out of FS1's control, that are owned by the cable companies, your Comcast, DirecTVs, and all them, they are owed certain commercials that they get, and it might just happen to fall in line where it happens to be in green flag action. They don't have a choice necessarily as far as that goes. It's unfortunate for the race fan, but kind of the hand they're dealt. But nonetheless, Jerry, I look at it, it's a step in the right direction. There's been a lot of complaints about Fox's production coverage. I was watching the duels on Thursday night that didn't even have the lights on for when to tell me it was a green flag or a yellow flag. But I would say that it's long overdue that we're doing these side by sides. I remember IndyCar was doing this on ABC years ago before we ever even saw it on a NASCAR broadcast.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the arguments I think back then was, well, our advertisers expect to have the full attention of the viewer, so we're not going to do side by side. Well, the truth is, um, most people when they were doing these full screen commercials, they would get up and they go to the bathroom, they get up, get a soda or something to eat. That was the break time. Now it gives you at least it gives you the opportunity to see racing and something next to it. And to get your message, you just need to have a good commercial that people are looking at, so that and you can sell your product. Just figure out a way to put something out there that's interesting. Look, I found it, whether it be YouTube or whatever. Sometimes I actually watch the dang ad because I think that's a cool intro. What is this about? You know? So if you have a good commercial or you have a good product, people will pay attention, even if they're out of the corner of their eye, they're watching the race on the other side of the screen.
Right. And people want to support sponsors that are investing money in NASCAR. That's why the
Yep.
sport works as it does. And I don't think that's excluded from commercials. You see a lot of commercials within races that are not even sponsoring race teams that want their market, their brand to still reach the NASCAR audience. And one point I would bring up, Dom, too, that I think is important with this. I was reading that going to this did not affect ad revenue whatsoever, that Fox sold out on advertising for the Daytona 500 at $500,000 an ad for every ad that was in this race. At a minimum, was cost $500,000. Like, as long as Fox is, if the checks are still cashing, they're going to be okay.
Oh, absolutely. But that pales in comparison to what a Super Bowl ad, which is multi-millions of dollars, but still you're
Super
paying
Bowl ads this year
500
were 8
grand.
million.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot of
Super
money.
Bowl ads this year were $8 million for a 30-second spot.
That's
Absolutely.
ridiculous.
Lots of money being spent and dropped. And these companies, you're right, Tyler, there's a lot of subliminal messaging. And people are going to remember the advertisers that are supporting the sport. We know NASCAR is a very brand loyal sport, and the fans are very, very loyal. You even know when a sponsor leaves, it probably hurts their sales. I'm sure we all remember when Mars and M&M's left in 2022. A lot of pissed off fans. So certainly NASCAR fans are going to remember that. They're going to remember maybe not necessarily the companies in the side by side, but everyone wins in this situation. Like I said, Fox wins, the fans wins, the advertisers are going to win, the sport wins. W's all around, Tyler.
How
Well,
how much Travelers whiskey do you think they sold this past weekend?
oh my goodness.
Okay.
Absolutely. The hype around that, the announcement of how they did it. They already won before that race car even turned a lap on the track.
Yeah. I collect bourbons and whiskeys and stuff, and Bubba Wallace is to blame. Thank you, Bubba, for getting me into a very expensive habit. Um, but I've got 50 or 60 bottles of very nice stuff that I probably will never drink any of it. But I do have a bottle of Travelers whiskey. I actually bought it in North Carolina about 6 months ago. Um, because somebody said this stuff's going to be really popular. I hear they're cutting a deal in NASCAR.
Yeah,
Guess
that's all
what?
you needed to hear to grab that.
It's really popular. They cut a deal in NASCAR. So,
Well, and one thing I would add, Jared, real quick before we move on to our next topic here, too, on this front is when you talk about production standpoint, I think we're all sitting here wondering, okay, what's Prime got up their sleeve?
I
What's
definitely am.
TNT? What's TNT got up their sleeve? And if you're Fox, who has been heavily criticized, and rightfully so, for their production quality over the last few years, you're probably thinking to yourselves, we can't fall behind the eight ball and get embarrassed by these new broadcast partners that are probably going to be doing some creative stuff when it comes to advertising. I mean, Prime, there was an NFL game they did a couple of years ago where they went with a commercial free fourth quarter and they just advertised Prime products, when they got the chance to do so because they could. And, obviously they have the flexibility with obviously people buying stuff on Prime. But if you're Fox, I don't know if you're necessarily threatened by that, but you got to be thinking like we have to keep the fan base happy and not let Prime kind of take up our lane here.
It's I'm very interested to see what the other networks do to change and some of the changes. I think we saw the CW this weekend with the drivers' names at the bottom of the screen, at the bottom third.
25 names at once.
I would like to point out that was a little bit much. I got a phone call and a text from my mother, who is 70 something years old, and she could not see the drivers' names. She could not read them. And that is going to be a common complaint, I promise you, because the older fans are not going to be able to read that. Sorry, they're just not. So it's a great idea. Let's just figure out a way to make it clear on the screen. But I want to see what everybody else is going to do, because I want to see what kind of unique things that these creative departments can come up with.
Yeah, certainly. Don, what else we got?
So another headline that we're going to look at, speaking of creative things, we love creativity. What about a sequel to Days of Thunder? This report coming out from Zach Catanzaretti at KickinTheTires.net about Jeff Gordon and Tom Cruise possibly talking about a Days of Thunder 2. The first one
How'd you
that
like that?
I love that
How'd you,
story, Jerry. You have to tell us more about it too, because we know that first movie came out in 1990. But the fact that Gordon and Cruise, they're talking, he's really trying to sound like get Tom Cruise warmed up on doing another thing. He wants to be involved with the project in some way, shape, or form. So we know Tom Cruise and Jeff Gordon have been longtime friends. We've seen that play out in public over the years. But certainly, Tyler, if Days of Thunder could get a sequel of sorts, you imagine again who wins? Everybody involved in the sport.
Well, and I'm no movie expert by any stretch of the imagination, but in my limited expertise, I would say that the best sequels to films are ones that have a long gap when you basically get the chance to hit the reset button, when you're not trying to put one out just a couple years later. And Tom Cruise did a phenomenal job with Top Gun Maverick, which I believe was about a 25-year gap between films. And so if Tom Cruise is on board to do another one of these, another Days of Thunder, I would think that they would go all out and it could be a fantastic film, not something to cash a paycheck of a quick sequel, to make a buck like we've seen these other movies. If Tom Cruise is going to be involved and if then get NASCAR and Hendrick and Jeff Gordon, all this, I would have every reason to think, Jerry, they're going to do it right.
well, I know a little secret, but and I'll share that with you in a minute. Yeah, if it happens, it'll be it'll be done right. But the I don't know how Zach came up with this, but I know what Zach does on is for like we all have side hustles. Okay. If you IMDb Zach Catanzaretti, he's in a lot of movies.
Hmm.
He's around a lot of Hollywood stars. Okay. So kudos to Zach for putting that out there, putting this story out there. It was, he works for me. Yay. I'm lucky. I'm a lucky guy to have him working at Kicking the Tires. But yeah, so I mean, this is fun stuff. Let's see what NASCAR can do. Let's see look, if Jeff Gordon and Tom Cruise are talking, you can bet something will happen. Think,
But
I mean, think about it. Why not? You got two decision makers right there that can make it happen.
Well, Jerry, we know we're all gambling people here. What would be the odds that there's a sequel to Days of Thunder if you're putting a plus or minus number on it? What's the number? What's the spread looking like right now?
I would say I would bet on it. I would put money on it.
Okay.
So I would bet on it. I would bet in favor.
Okay. I'd be intrigued. I'd watch. I'm excited about it. Dom, what else we got?
Well, that's a great segue into our next part here on looking at the NASCAR and Better Health 400. And of course, the triple header weekend this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. You have Truck and Xfinity tackling the high banks of Atlanta on Saturday with the Cup Series on Sunday. So, kind of a soft super speedway style racing of what we've come to expect over the last few years in this next gen car. Guys, if you had to put a number on it, who's the odds on favorite and what are their odds as per the Caesar Sportsbook entering this weekend?
Um, I'll say I'll say Denny Hamlin's favored and give me like 800.
Jerry?
Oh, I don't know. I hadn't looked at the odds yet.
I haven't either.
I don't know if Denny's favored. I think Suarez could pull it off. I think his odds are going to be something like 12 plus 1200. So that would be interesting. But I think also, yeah, I'll take Suarez to go back to back.
Okay. Well, We'll go over those odds in a minute. Ryan Blaney is your odds-on favorite without a
At
lap
what, at 7-1?
at 9-1 or plus 900. And then
Okay.
you have
Okay.
last September's winner, Joey Logano at plus 950 or 9.5 to 1. Austin Cindric at 10-1. Kyle Busch 11-1. Kyle Larson, who's never won at these kind of tracks, 14-1 alongside Chase Elliott, who won this race in July of 2022. Then you have Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin sharing 1,500 or plus 1,500, 15-1.
Oh, I was way
William
off.
Byron, who's won here before as well at 16-1. And last March's winner, Daniel Suarez, sharing odds at 18-1 with Christopher
18
Bell.
to 1?
18-1. So maybe not
I'm
gambling
betting it.
advice, but a value pick there of sorts. And you look down the list of drivers that might be long shots or with mid-range odds. AJ Allmendinger 50-1, Josh Berry 50-1, SVG, Carson Hocevar 100-1. The longest odd here listed would be JJ Aley and BJ McLeod, both at 500-1 each.
So what are the odds on the top 3 or top 5?
So
Because
yes,
go ahead.
a top three. So for Suarez, a top three would be plus 475 or 4.75 to 1. And the other name, so you said, no, Hamlin, Tyler. Hamlin's odds for a top three finish would be 4-1 plus 400.
Okay.
That's a good bet. That's a strong bet. 4-1 for a top 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got 7-1 for Jimmy Johnson to have a top 10 at Daytona.
Oh, and I'm sure you bet on that.
I did, but not as much as I should have.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So you're going Suarez. I'll go with the guy I picked to win the 500 last week. I'll go Ryan Blaney.
Well, that's a favorite. That's a favorite. So
That's a favorite.
Yeah.
I know that's not reaching much, but I'll go Blaney. How about you, Dom?
I'll go runner up there. I'm going to say Joey Logano at 9.5 to 1. I think gets it done at Atlanta. Goes back to back Atlanta consecutive races.
Okay. Okay. I like it. I like it. Before we go, our final segment, our mailbag, you can email us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on X and Facebook to submit your questions to us each and every week. And the mailbag questions will get started this week. And this one comes from Michael. Michael wants to know, Jerry, where do you see NASCAR potentially adding a new track or place to go in the future? What's next on the horizon?
Brazil.
Ooh. What do
That
you
was a
know?
quick answer too, by the way. Not even a hesitation.
What do you know, Jerry?
I'm betting we go to Brazil next year for the Clash. If not next year, the year after. I think what we've got with Bowman Gray, because NASCAR invested so heavily and they actually own the lease on the track now, that is a fallback track. Okay. They can run there at the last minute, no matter what, because they didn't have something come to fruition somewhere else. Okay. Whether we end up at Mount Fuji or in somewhere in Taiwan or in mainland China or wherever, Macau, or like I said, Japan, or Brazil, I have a feeling that Bowman Gray is going to be a track where we go back to, but maybe not over and over and over again. I think we go there, then we go somewhere else, then we come back. Or we go there, and then we come back. I also see us finally getting back to Canada. I think they're close to working their deal out up there, and having a race in Canada for the Cup Series. But I think Brazil comes first.
Tell me more. Why Brazil? What's the behind the scenes going on there?
Well, I mean, Daniel Suarez went down there and ran, last year. That was a big deal. It's a huge market, and it's something that they've already explored. The talk is already out there about them taking the Clash to Brazil. So we'll see. I also think that San Diego street course is a potential possibility. Um, a lot of the changes that we're going to see right now are going to be, I think, with the Clash. And I think probably we go to Mexico City for a few years, kind of like we did with Chicago. But then I also, you got to realize this is the last year for Chicago. Okay. So we're going somewhere else after Chicago. Is that the Montreal, or is that a San Diego street race? You can't really go out of the country, too far out of the country in the middle of the season. Okay. Getting all the cars, so for like going to Le Mans, they had to ship all that stuff over there weeks in advance because it all has to go through customs and there's rules, and so it's a lot harder to do it. F1 has a system where they can get around it, but they also don't always run every single week. We
Right.
run every single week, so there's some processes and behind the scenes stuff that would have to happen to be able to do a major out of the country race. I mean, we're driving to Mexico City. We would be driving to Canada. We would have to fly anywhere else.
Okay. Okay. Don, where is somewhere that maybe you've talked to some people, you're insiders, you're inside people. What's on the radar of what you know?
Oh, my insider knowledge here would pale in comparison to what Jerry has on this topic. And gosh, I think I'd like to see some racing go. I think that it has been answered too over the years. We've talked, I think, about this very topic maybe a few years back about Iowa being on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. So something like that coming to fruition is really good. I think Rockingham, personally, would love to see Rockingham be a part of that rotation with SMI, get some sort of cup race back. We're going to see Xfinity truck back there for the first time in 12 years this year. So I think seeing the Rock back on the schedule. How about you?
Yeah, the Rock would be fun. I want to see them get creative. More street racing, I think, would be good. And Dustin Long brought up this idea, and it's always kind of stayed at the back of my mind with Xfinity's involvement. Going to Philly for a street race is intriguing. If Xfinity can put the money behind it and you have the resources there, then maybe that's a possibility. That's a unique situation too, Jerry, of all the stadiums in that city are in one place, the Rocky statue, all that. That's one that Dustin brought up a while back. That's always been kind of intriguing to me of a possibility if Xfinity gets behind it.
Yeah, but the Xfinity deal is only for another year, most likely. I think they only signed a 1 year extension.
But aren't they
So
staying on as a premier partner in Cup?
I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, we saw a few, Geico left this year,
Yeah, he
and
didn't get
from that,
replaced either.
no. So, I mean, that's one of those things that they're going to have to look at. I don't know. Philly, man, I've been to Philly. I don't know if I want to be racing through the streets of Philly, but it can't be that bad, I guess. I thought
Yeah, yeah,
Chicago would be bad,
we
but
saw what they
Chicago
did in
was
that
okay.
city after the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. I don't know. Street courses are great. I think that's why somebody, mentioned San Diego to me, because that would be a fun one to do, and it would get us in the Southern California market, which is, we need to be over there. We don't have anything right now, and I haven't flown my drone over the Fontana, racetrack, but I was there earlier this year well, actually in November when I was out in Pomona for NHRA, and I took photos from every possible angle that you could. And that track is nowhere near being ready to go back to racing.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the stuff you see on Reddit with that it's going to be time, and you can tell that front stretch has kind of been left intact, but everything around that property has already been sold off, and you can tell it's being used
Yeah.
in
The
purpose, repurposed for something
yeah,
else.
the garage, there's a photo gallery on kickingthetires.net. If you search for it, the garages are still there. Um, but the footprint of the track would actually put the garages outside of the track, from what I can tell.
Wow.
So that would be interesting. Um, and then it again there it looks like it's going to be hard to make a turn one, turn two, the way that the buildings are right there at the edge of the track. So a lot of redesign stuff happening.
Okay. Another question coming in from Jack. Jack wants to know, so obviously drivers and team members cannot bet. Do drivers and team members look at odds from sports books to use as a motivator or to fire them up? Jerry, what do you know?
I actually know a lot about this topic because I ask drivers about their odds and all the time, and most of them don't care. Michael McDowell doesn't care, but he's interested in them. And he also says that odds makers are dumb, for lack of a better term. He didn't say it in uh, you know, quite that blunt of a way. But look, Michael McDowell should be a favorite to win the Daytona 500. Okay. He's shown for years that he can get there. Corey LaJoie has shown that he can get there. Okay. Cody Ware has shown that he can race up front in a super speedway race, and they're putting them down in the 30 to 50 and 100 plus to one odds. And that's great for those that are betting on them, but it's really not realistic. And I mean, when I go into, when I hear that Suarez is an 18 to 1, shot to win in Atlanta after winning the race last year, really? I mean, they still have the car. We haven't changed anything. Why is he now an 18 to 1? Shouldn't he at least be a little higher? I put him at 12.
Mhm.
Right.
So I just don't think, and someone, I sat by someone at Phoenix last year who does nothing but odds for some of these sites and some of these expert sites. And he said, NASCAR is such a small take in the gambling community for all of these sites that the odds makers aren't full time on NASCAR. They kind of use it as a fill in, and they don't study it the same way that they study the NFL or MLB or basketball or whatever. It's just not a big enough gamble for them. They don't make enough money on it yet. And until that becomes a thing where it's where last year in the truck race, we all made a lot of money because they made a stupid mistake with the truck championship odds. Okay. And you could bet parlays to where you basically couldn't lose. The way that they had parlays on top threes and some other stuff that you just couldn't lose because the top four drivers are really most of the time somebody in that top four is going to win the championship, is going to win the race and the championship. So
Yeah.
the odds were nuts. They didn't do it. They didn't do it for the rest of the weekend, but those people that bet on the truck race made a lot of money on that.
Well, and I feel like too, I know that NASCAR has been promoting sports betting more than they ever have before. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, guys, but when I was watching the broadcast on Sunday, Fox was showing live betting odds from
Yes.
Mhm.
DraftKings. And I don't think they've ever showed live odds during a race before, or at least not to
Well,
my knowledge. Like, that to me is still an untapped market of getting people that maybe are casuals or getting a new audience is, hey, this is one of the best sports you could potentially go bet on and make some good bang for your buck here.
the odds are if you know what you're doing. Like, look, I bet on NASCAR. I'm not. I've told NASCAR that I bet on NASCAR because I'll write a column from time to time. I used to write one every week, but I'll write a column and I'll break down the odds. I don't bet a lot, um, not like I did on football, but anyway, um, I'll bet $2 or $3, $5, whatever. Because if I give you a line, if I say Daniel Suarez is a favorite to win he is my value pick of the week. If I just say that, it means nothing. I'm just giving you my opinion, and I'm a blowhard, you know. But if I believe in it and I'm going to tell you the truth, I'm going to go put $5 on Daniel Suarez and turn it into 60. Okay, because it's ethical. It's more ethical to me to give someone that advice and then bet a few bucks than to give someone advice and not have any skin in the game
Yeah.
and just be honest about it. I told NASCAR, I said, look, I said, I'm doing it. I can't do it in NHRA. NHRA says you cannot bet. When you get your hard card to NHRA, you sign a document that says you cannot bet on NHRA races. So that's fine. I'll abide by their rules. I don't see them on a lot of sports books anyway. But the truth is, when you're covering the sport as a journalist, and it's more ethical to me to bet on it and say I'm doing it than to bet on it secretly and say I'm not doing it to follow some secret rule somewhere.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. I enjoy betting on it. It feels like at times, Dom, that if you don't, you're just leaving money on the table. Like guys like us that follow the sport, know the ins and outs, and see the practice and qualifying sessions, you can go in every week and have a good idea of who's going to be up front.
Oh, certainly. And I heard somebody say it too. Sports betting differs so much from, let's say, a slot machine or a table game. Yeah, you might know your odds on a table game, but sports betting is just the one that sets it apart. Where if you do your research, you do your homework, you really can have an advantage. Of course, yes, there are factors that you just can't account for. That's going to be every match. That's going to be every race, every football game. But I like what Jerry said. When you put your money where your mouth is, it adds credibility, I think, to what you're saying too.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you know, when you're doing it, it's like I've never used insider information. I've never gone to a team and say, "Hey, what do you think? Is are they having issues over there? Is this worth, where do you think you guys are going to be?" I've never used that information and tried to solicit information to make a stupid $5 bet. It's not worth it to me. I just don't want to put information out there to a fan and them think that, well, you're just don't know what you're talking about because
Right.
I put $5 on it. You know, there's people that bet last year on the truck race $10,000. I know who they are. Okay, $10,000. I put $5 on it. Okay, just saying.
You've kept it consistent the entire time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like it. Guys, before we go,
I only put $1 on Jimmy Johnson, by the way. I'll just tell you straight up. I had $1 left in my account. And I'm like, I can't not bet Jimmy Johnson,
I like it.
and I won.
Nice. Nice. Guys, before we go, Jerry, you're going to be at the track a lot over the next few weeks. Where all you headed here on the circuit, man?
I'm in Atlanta, and then I am in Gainesville, Florida. No, I'm sorry. I'm in Atlanta, and then I'm in Coda, and then I'm in Gainesville, Florida for NHRA, and then I fly out to Vegas. And then I am taking a few weeks off. So the rest of the guys will have to fill in. I do have a breaking news for you. I have to give a shout out to Chris Knight at catchfence.com. They broke a story that I've been working on, and I actually had it before them. They know I had it before them, but Dodge has filed an application to come back into the sport for the truck series. I was trying to get an interview with the head of Dodge, who was a new CEO that came on, I believe, last year, and I didn't get my stuff together in time to break the story ahead of them, and they beat me to it. But kudos to Catch Fence and Christopher Knight and his organization for putting that together and beating me to my own story that I've been covering since 2017 when I said that Dodge was coming back, and then stuff happened and it didn't. It's just delayed. So
So
technically,
maybe,
I broke it like 8 years ago, but now it's actually happening.
well,
Well,
maybe you
well,
can
credit
tell
to
us
you
now
for
then. Maybe
actually.
Dodge isn't going to be, well, Dodge will be here next year, but do we know teams? Do we know anybody that's going to sign on? What can you tell us about that maybe Catchment doesn't have?
Um, I can tell you off camera what I know
Okay.
because we know some stuff together, and I can tell by the way you're looking that you probably know some of the stuff that I know, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I think that there could be a new truck team formed.
I like it. Credit to you for actually bringing that up to the show, unlike Dom in his news and notes segment that, he left out that big story, that big
Yeah,
detail.
I left. I'm sorry about that. I'm still just thinking about that Eagles win a couple weeks ago. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You had one job, yeah, and you failed.
So
Uh,
did Travis Kelsey too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Travis Kelsey, yeah, he might be. It might be Jover for him anyway. So enjoy those vaccines, Trav. Dom, what's going on in your world this week?
So no NASCAR races. Yeah, this was the first year I've missed Daytona in a few years. But looking forward to getting back out for the West Coast swing here in a couple of weeks and some East Coast races later this year. Still trying to figure that out and still working on some big projects behind the scenes. So just staying busy on that front and just more importantly on the home front, just trying to be the best husband and dad and just trying to be spending as much time as we can with family. How about you,
I like
Tucker? What do you got going
so,
on?
so I am visiting family in Tulsa right now, where it has snowed 4 or 5 inches today, and I'm going to try to get on the road at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning to get back to Dallas in time for work at 9:30. Fingers crossed. We'll see if we.
You ain't gonna make it, bro.
Jerry, what are
I
the
think I
odds he
will.
makes it to work on
How the
time?
hell are you gonna make it from Tulsa to Dallas in 4 hours?
Well, I do. That's the normal time I make it. So I'm giving myself 30 extra minutes. I gotta be
Ain't
there
no
by
way.
9:30.
No way.
The snow is just like within the first hour. Once I get to Lake McAllister, I'm in the clear. So we'll see.
Be careful.
I will. Because you told me to be careful, Jerry, I'll be careful.
Yeah.
So once I get back to Dallas, then I'll enjoy the rest of the weekend, and then I will be hanging out with Jerry in Austin and Coda next weekend. So
there you go.
That's what I got going on. So Jerry, before we sign off here, plug away. Where can people find you and see all the great work you're doing, man?
Well, you can follow my snarkiness at Jerry Jordan _KCT on X, Instagram, Facebook, wherever else your social media heart desires. Or you can follow Kickin the Tires, which I'm woefully inept at keeping up with right now because I'm looking for someone to come on and help me with some stuff. So if you like to work on websites and yeah, you want to talk, give me a call and hit me up on DMs or whatever. My number's easy to find, so I'm needing one person to help me with some behind the scenes stuff.
Hey, Norm Benning gave out his phone number last week. If you want to do the same thing, Jerry, and keep the momentum going.
409-498-1074. My phone number has always been public. I've given it out on Sirius Radio. It does. I have no problems giving out my phone number. 409-498-1074.
No, I'm thinking that we need to make this a trend the next few weeks. See how many people can give out their phone numbers on air.
There we go. We have a 2-show streak going. So whoever our guest is next week, well, maybe David will be giving out his number next week.
Now I'll say this: Norm gave his out unprompted. Nobody asked for Norm's number, but he did his own thing. Now Jerry's keeping it going. We'll see where this goes from here. Appreciate y'all being here with us. For Jerry Jordan, Dominic, Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones. We'll put the checkered flag out on this edition of Let's Go Racing. Subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on social media, on X, at Star Podcast, Facebook, by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. Check out the Studio Soapbox Network. This show, as well as the Jones Report with yours truly, and the Coach Bodo's podcast on all podcast platforms. Appreciate y'all being here with us, and we'll see you right back here next week. Let's go. So long, everybody.